Hey guys, I wanted to put together a video because I got some answers on how to do the Chatfield data stuff that I didn't know how to do. I did want you to note in our lovely Lab 241 drive, I've included lab report templates, etc., but in your lab documents, under Lab 1 resources, I've included this hints live script file, okay? And this is also posted on Moodle, which I'll also show you. So if you go to the home page and scroll down to week 1, under the Lab 1 resources, so right under Lab 1, you'll see Lab 1 analysis hints. And so this first hint file is how to organize your data between group members. So for activity 1, you're supposed to watch those 5 videos, and then each person in your group is a rater, and you input each of your ratings. There may be anywhere from 3 to 5 of you, so this hint file might not have enough columns, but remember we had already gone over this in class, so that setup should look kind of familiar. Each row is representative of a subject. Each column will be representative of a rater or a judge. This is the Lab 1 analysis hints live script that was in the drive. Okay, so you'll click on this. It should go to your downloads folder unless you direct it otherwise. And once you have that, you can go into your downloads folder, wherever it's located, drag it from your downloads folder into the pathway that is open in MATLAB. So I'm using MATLAB Online since I realized a lot of you are using the online version. But you would drag in your data similar to how we've done for a lot of other stuff in this class so far, as far as examples. If you don't want to drag it in here, you can also drag it into your MATLAB drive. Okay, and I've provided shortcuts to both of these websites. Granted that you'll have to log in with your student email account, but those are in the troubleshooting document in our 241 Google Drive. Okay, so once you get in here, you can double click on this hints live script file, and you will see that there are some lovely instructions. Okay, some of them kind of go past a certain area, so you might have to slide this part a little bit. Alternatively, you can hide this area or collapse it. Okay, so if you want more space, that's totally fine, right? But in either case, I'm going to keep mine open just so I can see what's over there. Alternatively, if you don't want to collapse them, you can also slide this part over, and that will give you a little bit more space so you can see what's going on. So the first part of this, I'm going to save for our next lab because this won't be meaningful unless you have your group data. So hopefully we can do an example of this in class. This is where we're going to get started though, right? So lab activity 4 is where you are calculating the means and standard deviations in the Chatfield sample data such that it looks like table 5, right? So in class we went over how to do the ratings for judges 1 through 3 for individual viewings, right? And then in the Google Drive, I inserted an Excel spreadsheet that kind of has the template that I was working with for your table, right? So in here, this is kind of the setup for generally basically what's in the hints thing. But I've also included lab activity 4, which has this table, right? And then in addition to this, we could put, I think in the Chatfield table, it says 3 judges. Okay. And then there was also a column, if we're modeling it at least, 3 judges and 2 viewings. Okay. So I can merge these cells as well as wrap the text, right? But pretty much, I'm going to copy this row too. So these are where your plus and minus signs are going to go. But basically, your means will go in the blank cells. Your standard deviations you just insert after the plus or minus sign. And then for these viewings here, these are going to only have one value that you're sticking into them. And I want these to merge. Stay. Okay. They're going to have one value in them. And then I'll copy this formatting across these cells here. But basically, 3 judges and 2 viewings. You're taking the averages of every single judge as well as all of the viewings. So that's what that last column is. And if we wanted to make it look more like our table in the article, we could add a line there. Okay, but this is what you're going to be putting stuff into. If you're like, I don't want to deal with MATLAB, I know how to use Excel, you can also use the Chatfield data that's in here, in which case you could, I'll just do a quick example. You could start inputting your calculations in here, and then reference this sheet over here. So that was for level 1, rater 1, viewing 1. And if I press enter, it should calculate the average of the cells that I referenced in this Chatfield data spreadsheet. Okay, so that's another way that you can complete these calculations if you wanted to do stuff in Excel. Okay, the standard deviation won't work as well just because I've got the plus and minus signs in here, so this is more so a skeleton to work with MATLAB. But it is an option. So I'll be toggling back and forth between MATLAB and this to give you some examples on how your calculations are going to go. But the first thing that we need to do is read in our Chatfield data. So I already have the Chatfield data in my pathway in my MATLAB drive, right? And this is as simple as finding the location of that data on your computer and then dragging it into the drive, okay? So once it's in the drive, I can type out the name of the file. Basically what this is doing is it's creating a variable called file name, and then we're just loading what we assign to that file name. So I can run this section, and you'll see that my Chatfield data has been loaded into my workspace. From here, we can start working on part A. So that's finding the mean score for each rater for each viewing. Now, we did this example in class, so this should be review. If you feel like you have this down packed, you can skip on to the next section in the video. But pretty much what this is doing is we are going to find the mean score and sampled standard deviation for each single rater in each view that they did. And then basically you're just going to repeat this process for each individual rater for each viewing until you have all of this filled in. Okay, so for every single judge, for every single viewing. So that'll be repeated many, many times, hopefully giving you some nice practice with this stuff. But this is kind of a skeleton on how to start. Please note it is not complete. Okay, so we can start by entering a variable name, right? Being one of our raters and one of their viewings. Let's say we start with rater 1, viewing 1, okay? What this code is doing is it's assigning this variable name to var name, right? And then this code is saying I'm going to take the mean of Chatfield data, whatever the variable name is that you're assigning, and it would give you the average. Okay, we can't leave this as is because if you recall, if I click and open this Chatfield data, okay, you will see that rater 1 variable 1 is assigned to 41 different values, right, representing all of our subjects, and each subject has a certain level. But in our Chatfield table 5, all of our levels are separated, right? So that means we need to assign or further identify the level that we are trying to measure, okay? And we do that by adding another set of parentheses. And this is what we did in class, right? So it should seem familiar. We're going to insert the data set that we're pulling from. We put a dot and we can say level to indicate the variable in that data sheet that we want to call upon. And we want levels that are equal to 1, right? We would add this same little chunk of code, right, because it's specifying where we're looking for stuff, and we can put it in the standard deviation section. Okay, so I could run this section now, and you'll see that I get 13.5 and 2.8. You guys can round to the first decimal place. I think that is totally fine. Okay, so 13.5 plus or minus 2.8, right? And then those are our values for viewing 1. Yay, we did it. Okay. Then we can go back to MATLAB, and then now let's say we want rater 1 viewing 2. In which case we don't change anything here because we're still calculating for non-dancers. We can run this section again, right? And now we get 14.99, right? Anything above 5 usually we round up, so this would become 15.0 and a standard deviation of 2.8. So I can put that rater 1 viewing 2, and I already forgot what the number was. 15.0 and 2.8. Okay, so 15.0, and in here we would have 2.8. Okay? So basically you would keep doing this, right? Maybe we change it rater 2 viewing 1. We can run the section. Again, level is still non-dancers. You would input your mean and standard deviation. Let's say we wanted to move on to our beginner dancers, right? They were labeled with a value of 2. So as soon as you're ready to move on to them, let's say we're starting rater 1, viewing 1, level 2. Right? We can run the section and we get these values 17.1, actually 17.2 and 2.1. And that will go here. All 2. Right? Because that was rater 1, viewing 1 for beginner dancers, which is a level 2. Okay? So you'll use those methods, adjusting your values as needed to fill out that first top part of the table. Part B, you're going to find the mean score for all 3 raters for each viewing. So this would be for this section down here. Okay. So in this case, we're entering 3 different variable names, which we'll use Aston's example, right? Rater 1, 2, and 3 for viewing 1. So you literally just put in the variable names. Remember, case sensitive, so they have to match. Rater 2 and rater 3. Okay, and then in this section, what it will do is it will call upon these variable names that you have assigned, and then we'll calculate the mean. But remember, similar to in part A where we had to add the specifications for the level, we have to do the same thing in our code, right? So if we want all 3 judges and their means for viewing 1 for non-dancers, okay, it's basically the same process that we just did. So it's going to call upon Chatfield dat for rater 1 variable 1, but we only want information from level 1 dancers. Okay, so we put in level equal to 1, right? And we would add that for each one of these sections. Okay. And then that completes the code. And then for standard deviation, we would have to add the same information in each of our variables. So that way we get everybody. Right, and then if you were doing this for intermediate, you would use 3. If you were using it for advanced, you'd use 4, right? So you're just changing the level based on where you're filling the information in your table. But for now, we'll do level 1 and call it a day, right? So this section here, you'll just run the section, and we can see that we get a mean of 14.6 and a standard deviation of 3.6. Actually, this would be 14.7, we'd round up. So in your lab 1 data, again, we looked at all of the raters for viewing 1 for level 1, which is non-dancers. Okay, so 14.7 and 3.6 would go here. Okay, so that's part B. And then if we go down further, we have part C, which is to find the mean score for all raters for all viewings. Okay, so this one might get a little bit crazy, and that's why there's a ... in here. Okay, so basically there's 3 raters, right? So you're going to have 3 calls to viewing 1. So let's keep using our beginner level or non-dancer level. So we'd have rater 1 viewing 1, rater 1 viewing 2, rater 2 viewing 1, rater 2 viewing 2, rater 3 viewing 1, and rater 3 viewing 2. Okay, so then down in this area, again, we're going to make the same changes we did up here, which I don't feel like typing over again. So I'm just going to copy this part, because that's the part that's missing from the code here. And basically, I just paste it after each variable, right? So this was 3. I'll have to take out that ... part. Okay, and we can just tag this part on here. And I'll just keep adding that extra little bit of information until I get to the end of the code line. I'll do the same thing for the standard deviation. And I mean, you could also just copy the mean calculation line and just replace mean with STD. That also works. I'm kind of doing it the long way, but that's fine. Okay, so variable 5, we would identify level 1, and variable 6, we would identify variable 1. Okay. And so, hopefully this works. Right now it's saying I have an error. So let's make sure that we've got semicolons in between each variable name. That looks okay. I'm going to try running this to see what happens. Hey, look, it worked! Okay, so this section now, we get 14.6, 3.6, we would round up, right? So 14.6 and 3.6 would go in this part. Right? And then, of course, like, you guys can make your table look nice and pretty. So, I mean, if you want all of these values centered, you can do that. We can readjust each of these areas so that, you know, it doesn't take as much space. We're not, you know, we don't have a lot of white all over. You'll also notice that some of the font looks funny. So we could create a default, right? You can change the properties. And then when you're ready and you have all of this filled in, you can just copy and paste it into a Word document. I still haven't had any luck copying and pasting this into your lab report live script. So if you paste it into Word, you could always take a screenshot of the table in Word and then just insert an image into your lab report. So I believe in order to do that, I'll just create a new live script so I can show you. I believe you go to Insert Image, and then it should ask you where your image is, right? So if usually when I take screenshots, they go to my desktop, so you would find the screenshot that you made, and then you can insert it into your lab report. I think that would probably be the easiest way to do things. But this kind of helps with that last part. And then obviously for each of these other ones, right, you would just change all of the code that says equals 1 to equals 2 for beginners, equals 3 for intermediate, equals 4 for advanced, equals 5 for professional. And just to note, when you guys come into this spreadsheet, just so that it stays the same for everybody, I have it on view only. So if you want to stay in Google Sheets, what you can do is just make a copy, or you can download it as an Excel file if you have Excel on your computer. Okay, and then even if you don't have Excel on your computer, you have access to the online Excel, so you can always download that as well and open it in there. Okay, but that's more or less how you can use this lovely little hint live script to insert into your lab report. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. And then obviously if you have any questions, please let me know.